Right now, like, I am legitimately at rock bottom in my life. I am at the lowest low in my life that I've probably ever been.
I don't know if it's just me, but over the past month or so I've been even more chronically online than usual, and I can assure you that it has absolutely nothing to do with immense feelings of sorrow and misery. The events that contributed to this month's depressive episode are neither here nor there, but I did what any rational person would do in my situation in an attempt to feel better. Embark on a deep dive of the ideology of the black pill.
I know I'm still young, I still have a lot of time, but in many ways, it's too late.
Where these sub-5 dudes who are in denial that it's over for them, they somehow managed to, Jester Max their way into a relationship, then they break up after a couple months, and then they have these fucking mental breakdowns.
The black pill is a metaphorical term often used to describe a set of beliefs often linked to nihilism, fatalism, and defeatism. Online, the black pill is commonly associated with incels and 4chan users, often described as doomers. Dragging myself further down into the pit of despair, I listened to atomized and socially alienated young men detail the utter hopelessness of living in the postmodern world. Talk about the unprecedented standards you have to meet as a man to even get a girl to swipe on your dating app profile. And of course, looked at comment after comment that read, "It's over for me, bro." Being the man of rainbows, sunshine, and positivity that I am, I couldn't help but empathize and partially resonate with the qualms the black pill community voices. Modern life for young people has become increasingly confusing to navigate. How do we go about finding and fostering a loving relationship with a partner? Where the hell are we supposed to come up with hundreds of thousands of dollars for a down payment on a house working a 9 to 5? And is any of it even worth it anymore? Rather morbid, I know, but these are very real concerns many people in my generation have. It was looking like I was officially taking a fast track to becoming blackpilled, but I started having second thoughts when I discovered the root of the entire blackpill philosophy, which is looks are everything. According to blackpillers, if you're not born with the correct genetics, height, bone structure, positive canthal tilt, etc., your chances of finding success in this world and attracting women specifically are entirely impossible. This initially seemed incredibly extreme to me, but the more I thought about it and how much the world has devolved into a superficial, gluttonous, fame-obsessed hellscape, I unfortunately began to see an uncomfortable amount of truth within the ideology. Not for all men, but specifically men anywhere from 18 to 27 years old. And based on the prevailing data concerning male loneliness, suicide, and mental health issues, it makes sense why large swaths of young men have congregated within the black pill space, distilling the source of their misery down to their lackluster physical appearance. Over the past few years, self-improvement content has grown increasingly popular and recently appears to have hit everyone's For You pages in the form of looksmaxing. Looksmaxing is an attempt at enhancing one's appearance by methods including getting a haircut and dressing nicely, taking steroids and working out, undergoing plastic surgery, or engaging in alternative techniques such as mewing. Although my entire channel is predicated on shitting on cultural trends I believe are asinine, fundamentally I see nothing wrong with looksmaxing. Striving to look your best through working out, eating well, and finding your style are all incredibly noble pursuits. But naturally, the looksmaxers have taken things way too far. They're allegedly mewing, starve maxing, jelking, hitting their jawlines with a hammer, and engaging in a myriad of other autistic sounding practices all in an effort to increase their physical attractiveness, ultimately in hopes of attracting women. Just some good old self-improvement, right?
Wrong.
We'll get to that in a second. The looksmaxing trend has completely taken over the mainstream of social media in an almost incomprehensible way, glorifying the bodies and faces of incredibly feminine-looking male supermodels and living vicariously through their lives in schizophrenic TikTok edits with even more brain-rot retard music playing behind the videos. Initially, I was quite perplexed by these looksmaxing videos, because I was like, are men just finding out for the first time that there are ways that you can improve upon your looks? Looking presentable, having your hygiene in order, and maintaining a degree of physical fitness is honestly just the bare minimum. But these people make it sound like they're training to be Batman with Ra's al Ghul in the League of Shadows. Oh yeah, I'm gonna looksmax all summer and I'm gonna come out ready to protect Gotham from low-level criminals. Brother, you're brushing your teeth and taking a shower. Shut up. To me, looksmaxing is nothing more than yet another coping mechanism for young men who are attempting to navigate and deal with the fact that it is almost impossible for most of us to attract women in today's day and age. To me, this is exactly why they've chosen figures of unattainable beauty to model themselves after. After all, the #1 tenet of the black pill is giving up. And to aspire to look like someone who is literally impossible to look like perfectly illustrates the defeatism of the black pill ethos. Most of these guys aren't actually mewing, they're miserable and lonely eating McDonald's. The looksmaxing videos are really a cry for help wrapped in post ironic, zoomer, dark humor. And look guys, I get it and unequivocally empathize. This shit is trash. But it's not because you're ugly. First of all, most people aren't very nice to look at if we're being perfectly honest. And it's wild that the black pill community feels entitled to being a 1% giga chad without putting in any work or effort whatsoever. Here's the thing, 99.9% of people can drastically improve their looks by eating a clean, high protein diet of whole foods in a slight caloric deficit, consistently exercise and weight train, and find a hairstyle and well-fitting clothes that suit you. It's pretty simple. If you implement that regimen into your lifestyle, there's no way in hell it's even possible to be a grotesque sub 5. So if you haven't done that, I don't want to hear the victim mentality bullshit. I empathize with these young men because of what I think has caused irreparable damage to our society and what I think is the ultimate black pill, the death of in-person community. As we've transitioned into a predominantly digital world, almost all sense of in-person community has become non-existent, and the majority of young people have retreated to their devices, developing codependent parasocial relationships with content creators, have inhabited the darkest depths of Discord chat rooms, and are taking relationship advice from people who would have been diagnosed as clinically insane 15 years ago. I believe the in-person community began to degrade shortly following 2016, as social media influencers slowly began infiltrating the mainstream. By 2019, we were already in the gutter community-wise, every teen and young adult constantly feeding their socially acceptable phone addictions. I was in college at the time, and I couldn't believe how isolated and miserable everyone was, myself included. People try to cope by referring to this emptiness as the sophomore slump, but the lack of community on campus is what caused it in my eyes. Everyone walked into their class in pajama pants and hoods up, no one really spoke to each other they didn't already know, and the overall vibe, as they say, was just so bleak and dead. And guess where the majority of men and women were meeting each other? Tinder and Bumble. We're at a university with tens of thousands of people and you're still struggling to find somebody in person? If that doesn't illustrate the death of community, I don't know what will. Then COVID hit and it increased our media consumption, worship of influencers, and our inevitable path of living in a world resembling idiocracy by about 500,000%, and ultimately decimated the mere concept of in-person community altogether. Even when you go out, whether it be a music festival, a bar, or a restaurant, it's seldom that you see someone who isn't glued to their device, taking a photo for Instagram, or periodically checking their notifications. Spending as much time on our devices as we do is already detrimental enough to our social skills and overall mental health, but in 2023, so much of the content on the internet is about men versus women, only increasing the already massive divide between the two genders. Young men are becoming increasingly lonely, and women aren't doing much better, regardless of the droves of men in their DMs.
How many men DM you on a daily basis? If you had to guess.
Like hundreds.
People are getting married later now than ever, and are having more trouble finding and maintaining long-term relationships, let alone healthy ones. In general, the sentiment surrounding the opposite gender from both sides is one of disdain and hatred, and regrettably, I'll admit it, it's kind of for a good reason. Primarily because in the postmodern era, men and women are almost exclusively meeting each other online. Social media has absolutely fucked our minds beyond repair concerning beauty standards, and dating apps have amplified the sexual and relational options most women and established, famous, and or hyper-attractive men have to an almost comical degree. The top 10 to 20% of men in looks, money, network, and status are drowning in female attention, and most women are all the way at the bottom of the Mariana Trench of male attention. This has been nothing but negative for society at large, as most top 10 to 20% of men aren't looking for monogamous relationships because of their options, and will lie to women, sell them the dream of a relationship, sleep with them and throw them in the trash, hurting the women and giving them an incredibly negative outlook on men, and rightfully so, pertaining to those men specifically. But even though they've been hurt by a fuckboy, a bad boy, a scammer, a pirate, or a vampire, they still go back to these types of guys, as young women have no interest in an average guy anymore because of their options. Then the average guy, who's been wasting away alone with no options but his right hand, says to himself, well, I'm a good guy, why doesn't she choose me? Then gets angry with his lack of success within the dating market and is tired of getting mogged.
Can somebody explain me what mog means? Because I've been reading a lot of mogging, mog.
Mogged to oblivion by Chads and Tyrones, finds Andrew Tate, is galvanized, and starts parroting rhetoric like women are gold-digging whores to the two women in his life, which naturally causes them to distance themselves from him. Then he convinces himself he's a virgin because of genetic determinism, ends up obsessing over the position of his mandible, and sends pictures of his face to Wheat Waffles, asking for an in-depth analysis of his Canthal tilt for $33. Akin to the financial middle class of America being completely destroyed due to inflation, increased cost of living, and the ever-growing wealth divide, the middle class of the dating pool has been absolutely decimated and wiped out entirely due to the inordinate amount of options the top 10 to 20% of men and the majority of women have. In other words, we're all delusional. We're seeing these hot-ass people on social media. They're everywhere. We've got unlimited options on dating apps if you're a lady or a top 10% guy. And that has brought on one of the saddest realities in the modern era. In 2023, if you're not the exception, you're completely fucked. What happened to us? What happened to choosing people because you have a genuine connection with them? What happened to being okay with being normal? My answer to that is because honestly, I don't really think most young people have the capacity to authentically connect with others in this day and age. And their sole objective within relationships is to extract resources from other people and use them for their own personal gain. This is exactly why they place so much emphasis on beauty, status, clout, etc. instead of character, morals, and personality. Why would you value someone's character when you don't have any yourself? Shout out to my generation, man. Let's go. The looksmaxing trend has perfectly illustrated yet another instance of traditional gender roles being completely flipped on their head. Never in a million years would I have thought I'd live to see the day where one of the ideal male physiques for young men to aspire to would be 6'2", 120 pounds. On top of that, one of the faces of looksmaxing is Jordan Barrett, who of course happens to be a gay man. What is it with young heterosexual men's infatuation with guys who star in movies showing how homoerotic hypermasculinity is, stories written by gay men, and at this point, just straight up wanting to look like a gay man? This has become a reoccurring theme in nearly all of my videos that I find more and more hilarious, but extremely telling of the cultural bizarro world we exist in. Without possessing physical attractiveness as a guy, there's no shot in hell that any man could even get their foot in the door with a woman in today's day and age. I think that this is very peculiar for most men, and they're having a really tough time dealing with it. They're confused. Because throughout all of human history, male beauty has never mattered. In days of yore, our competence would almost surely secure us a job and would make us some money, which would give us the ability to protect and provide for a lovely young lady, start a family with her, and hopefully live a life of moderate fulfillment. Simple enough, but those days are long gone. Primarily due to the fact that women are making their own money now. And because of that, they technically don't need a man anymore. They're like, I want a hot guy that I can just look at and stare at because I don't need him to like chop down trees and build me a cabin. I can just rent in a big city because I'm making a ton of money because I'm a girl and I'm great at my job. Girls are the best in the world. Anyway, in my estimation, this is why men are dropping out of the workforce and universities at unprecedented rates. And sociologists still don't have a definitive answer as to why this is occurring. I wonder. It's because without a loving relationship, family, and/or home to take care of and provide for, there is almost no point of working some job you despise. Look, even working a shitty job for shekels would be completely worth it for me if there was some love that I could come home to. But sadly, that's just not the case for myself, boo-hoo, or most young men in 2023. What a shame. I want to talk about online dating a little more because this shit is beyond out of whack. Out in the real world, and I mean this to the fullest extent, most women don't really have distinct physical types. Obviously, you have to be above a sub 5 and put together to a certain extent as a guy, but if you're charming, have a little charisma, are kind and funny, and most importantly, you're able to make women feel comfortable and uninhibited, they'll like you. You don't have to be a Chad for this to happen. And yeah, maybe for these, 10 out of 10 6'4" attractive guys who, by the way, there's like none of them. Maybe for them it's a little bit easier, but the reality is you don't have to be a 10 out of 10 for girls to like you in real life. On top of that, women have been forced to go against their nature in terms of what they find initially attractive in person, which is presence, temperament, and demeanor, which of course no one ever talks about, and they're swiping on men in the way that we swipe on women. Are you physically attractive or not? Which is the exact reason why women are swiping on so few men. Unless you own 29 Lamborghinis or in the top 10% of looks, your success on dating apps will probably be non-existent. I'll get personal here. I recently downloaded Tinder for experimental and research purposes only, and my results were, well, probably better than most. I don't present my results to brag, but to illustrate how shallow and looks-based our society has become. This also goes back to me saying that in the real world, women don't really have distinct physical types. 99.9% of the women that I've been with or the women that I've attracted in my life have looked nothing like me, have had completely opposing ideology to mine, and have had completely different interests. When I was in college, I was even more pessimistic and sullen than I am now, and I had a class with an astrology girl who only wore bright colors, hated smoking and drinking and negative people, and listened to Taylor Swift. We kind of got to know each other, and a few weeks went by, and one day after class, she invited me back to her apartment. And guess what? The first thing we did before was go to the liquor store for a pack of cigarettes. On Tinder, at least from what I've been able to tell, every girl that has liked me is either goth, emo, or alternative. In one way or another, they all share aesthetic similarities with me, which certainly isn't an issue, but once again, the attraction is just all based on looks. But what do having looks actually get you on dating apps? Maybe a date with a girl you don't even like. You have to listen to her talk about astrology, pay for dinner, and you'll probably go home alone without sleeping with her because you guys had zero chemistry. Anyway, I think many men have forgotten this fact, but most of us, if not all of us, are really looking for a woman who loves us and appreciates us for who we are and what we do, trusts us within a healthy, committed relationship, and makes an effort to understand us. We don't want 304s at the club, not matches on Tinder, and certainly not vacuous one-night stands with women you don't even like. As corny as it sounds, all I could ever want is a meaningful relationship with a woman who loves me, and I believe deep down every man who isn't a complete sociopath wants the same. And because of that, I refuse to give up. If there's any reason to keep going and to have some semblance of hope, it's that. Speaking of which, there is still hope, which all of the black pillars are going to hate me for saying, but it's true. And I'm not going to be that guy who sits there and says, "Yeah bro, you'll be fine. Just have personality. Just be more attractive. Just be more confident. Have a positive can't-all tell." I'm not going to say that. But there are always going to be little steps that you can take every day to improve your life. If you have a hobby, really delve into it, and eventually you'll see progression. Read a little every day. Broaden your vocabulary. Try to get out in nature when you can, even if it's just for a while. If your social skills aren't the best, really try and make an effort to talk to people at your job, at school, and you will see progression. Put down the fucking McDonald's and eat a nourishing meal every now and then. And after enough consistency, you will be able to look in the mirror with a little less self-loathing than usual, and maybe even a little bit of pride. These little victories are what build confidence within yourself, and what are ultimately your support system you have to fall back on when things get tough. If you've proven to yourself that you have the will to hurdle obstacle after obstacle in your life, tripping and falling is nothing but a minor setback, and it's also inevitable. Like, shit's not going to be perfect all the time. You're not just going to be walking around with like 700 women worshiping at your feet every time you step out of the house. And look, getting up early and going on a walk isn't going to magically cause all of your problems to dissipate. And I can assure you that you will still go through depressive bouts. No matter how successful or good with women you are, you're still going to have girl problems. And some days, you're just going to be unmotivated and miserable, but that doesn't mean that it's the end. These are hardships we must endure and try and overcome. And the only way that that's going to be possible is for for us to overcome the inherent desire to just give up whenever a task in front of us is daunting or difficult. This is my biggest problem with Blackpillers. They claim that they are deeply suffering, lonely, and unappreciated, which I'm not trying to take away from, but they don't realize that loneliness, rotting away in their room, all while consuming Blackpill content by the hour, is the furthest thing from suffering that they could possibly imagine. The Blackpillers have steeped themselves in their own morbid version of comfort by residing in echo chambers that confirm all of their biases about the world, giving them the ultimate justification for giving up. They blame others and the world for their plight, pity themselves, and wallow in their own misery. Some even going as far as romanticizing their loneliness, which even I'll admit can feel really good in the moment, but all it does is leave you stuck in a purgatorial state with the inability to progress or really even regress, because in all actuality, what you're doing is just taking the easy way out, which inevitably will make you feel like garbage. But you don't have to be stuck. After enough little victories and taking it a day at a time without having delusions of grandeur concerning your aspirations, as I said, you will see progression. And after enough progression, things will be looking up a little more than they were before. But who knows, maybe I'm just coping too. Good night, my dear incels. Bye-bye now.